Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician, a relationship and intimacy coach, and I'm an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing marriage. I've shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. So if you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now, let's dive in. If your spouse were only more responsive, more respectful, picked up after themselves, wanted to spend more time with you, knew how to touch you well, initiated sex more often, if your spouse did what you want them to do you believe that you would be more happy? If only they would change, then you would feel so good. That's the topic for today's episode. But in the meantime, I want to read a review that someone left on Amazon last year for my book, Uncompromising Intimacy. If you're here on this podcast listening because you want to know more about how to rekindle passion and enhance and enjoy intimacy in your relationship, I think you're really going to get a lot out of reading Uncompromising Intimacy. It's available on Amazon and on Audible, where I read it, and the link to purchase it is in the show notes. Let me read you what this reviewer said. They left a 5-star review and wrote, "What a breath of fresh air. The perspective that Alexandra brings to this sensitive topic is desperately needed. I hate the idea of compromise in a relationship, and she just nailed it right on the head. I think this should be mandatory reading for anyone about to go into a marriage or long-term relationship, or for people who are struggling. So much of the hangups we have are about desires left unfulfilled, and this really talks about how to solve that issue. So if you want to solve that issue, or just get a few more tips and tools to enjoy more connection and feel better in your marriage, then definitely check out my book, Uncompromising Intimacy." Let me just cut to the chase about this topic, about wishing our partners would change because then we would feel better. Then we would feel happier, more joyful, more turned on, more erotically alive. If only my spouse would change. The bottom line is that the key to happiness in marriage is being a happy person. Sure, it has something to do with how your partner behaves, but fundamentally, I'm just going to say it again, the key to happiness in marriage is being a happy person. So let me tell you why I'm thinking about this and how I come to express it in this way. A month or 2 ago, I was reading a friend's Facebook post where he was referring to research that's been done looking at the possible correlation between income, financial success, and happiness. A research project that was done showing that as people had an increase in their income, there was zero correlation with their happiness. I mean, if people are impoverished and exceptionally low income, on the verge of homelessness, below the poverty line, then definitely having more income raises happiness levels. But once you get to 6 figures annually, the correlation between more income and more happiness just didn't show up looking at the data when these researchers examined their results. So the conclusion, the general understanding in the relevant research population is that increased income does not correlate with increased happiness. Then some number of years later, another study was done which showed very clearly that as income rises, so do happiness levels. there's a clear correlation, even beyond six figures, that as people have more money, they have more happiness, which is confusing because the result was the exact opposite of what the earlier study I described concluded. So another group of researchers looked at the data from both studies and dug deep and considered additional variables. And what they concluded is that happy people become happier with more revenue, and unhappy people remain unhappy despite more revenue. And I don't have studies and research to back up what I'm about to say. There's a profound truth about what it is to be human, which is reflected in the data looking at increased income and happiness levels, which pertains in other areas of life as well. And whether or not there's research and proper academic publications to back this up, this is definitely something that I see in my practice with the individuals I work. So even if it's only anecdotally true, take it because it's going to serve you. Because when someone is happy, they take responsibility for their own experience and choose to be happy, the marriage is so much better. And when someone doesn't make that choice, it doesn't really matter how their partner behaves. They're still dissatisfied. So if you're the partner with an unhappy spouse, well, by all means, continue to improve yourself, be more happy, more considerate, more kind, and more generous, because it's empowering to be that way. And certainly be kind and generous and considerate of yourself, at least as much as you are being of your partner. But if you're someone who is unhappy and you want your partner to change in order to become happier, in order to fix the problems in your emotional well-being, let me tell you that your partner can change in the ways that you want, and you'll only feel a little bit better. It's like you'll get to the equivalent of six figures, and then it won't really make any difference. I've seen this again and again where, let's say, a woman just is really unhappy because her husband doesn't acknowledge how much she contributes to the household. I'm not talking financially. It could be financially. It's just not the point that I'm making. But in terms of like how much she does with taking care of the children and the pets and making sure dinner's on the table, let's just say. And she feels really unseen and resentful and unhappy because he hasn't been seeing it. But then he understands and he acknowledges her, but she doesn't actually feel better. It's like she doesn't really believe it, even though he's being genuine. This phenomenon happens again and again in my coaching sessions. And then I need to coach her to actually do her own internal work to believe him. Of course, I don't do that when he doesn't seem genuine, but it's astonishing how often he is genuine and she doesn't hear it. And by the way, vice versa. There's nothing about what I'm saying that's gender specific. He can be doing so much for the household and feel taken for granted despite doing a lot with bedtimes and getting dinner on the table. And she just has her attention in other places. She's doing other things herself, whatever it is. And then she appreciates him. She verbalizes and acknowledges what he's doing. And he also often doesn't believe it and has to do the work to really accept the new situation they're in where they appreciate one another more. So I actually could tell loads and loads of stories because there's a way in which every couple that I coach, there's some version of something that is challenging, irksome, frustrating, disconnecting, somehow unsatisfying for at least one of them. And once that becomes available, I coach the partner to show up in the way she desires, I coach her to open her heart and be present in the way he desires. But that's not enough to totally change the dynamic. It is to change it a little bit, the equivalent of getting to 6 figures. But after that, when you get what you want, you need to shift internally and take responsibility to make sure you feel better and you carry that forward. Put differently, when it comes to happiness, what your partner is doing, of course it matters. But also, you are the only one who can fill your own cup. You are the only one who can create lasting peace of mind for yourself. You are the only one who can create your own happiness, so long as your partner is present to a certain degree. And after that, when you are both taking responsibility for your own happiness, you both make sure that you bring your best, most appealing, joyful, happy selves to one another. Of course, there are challenges in other feelings, but fundamentally what I'm saying is true. Well, that is a marriage that is certainly happy and juicy and intimate and passionate and well-calibrated with nuance for the two people in that relationship. Now, if I were you listening, I would say, okay, well, how do I become a happier person? Whether my spouse is showing up in the way I want them to, receiving me in the way I want them to, or not, how can I work on being a happy person? So, did you have that question? Whether you did or not, I'm going to go ahead and respond. And I like to think fairly systematically about these things. Of course, happiness is kind of elusive, but it's helpful to think clearly and systematically. And so when it comes to taking action, there are 4 categories to consider: spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Each arena provides opportunities to turn the dial up on your happiness, on your well-being, on your ability to really enjoy your relationship. So for each person, what's going to be in each of those categories is going to vary. But when it comes to spiritually upping your capacity for happiness, well, for some, it's going to be prayer, meditation, maybe just being in nature and feeling awe, or listening to an incredible symphony. Whatever it is that spiritually uplifts you and fuels your capacity for happiness, that's something to do on a regular basis. When it comes to mental activities, well, again, it depends what appeals to you. There's journaling, there's writing down your desires and really feeling them. There's doing thought work along the lines of Byron Katie, where you look at your thoughts and identify the assumptions you're making and get yourself free. Any kind of mindset work is a form of mental activity which increases your capacity for happiness. Then when it comes to emotional endeavors, honestly, the most profound is noticing what you're actually feeling, taking a breath, maybe taking a breath and then noticing what you're feeling, and just being with that feeling, because it will reveal insights and it also will pass. And so much of our lives consist of distraction and avoidance of how we're feeling, whether it's eating or shopping or scrolling social media or sometimes exercises like that. It can be so many different things, but anytime we're busy and kind of propelled forward with what we need to be doing, there's a good chance that there's some feelings that we are avoiding. And even when the feelings are grief, fear, anxiety to some degree, sorrow, anger, when we just feel them without trying to get over them or do anything, or definitely not talking about taking action or unleashing it on someone else, just get to know yourself, feeling that feeling. That is an incredible way to increase your capacity to also be able to feel happiness and be with it. And then when it comes to physical things, well, exercise gets the endorphins going. A simple 20, 30-second hug gets the oxytocin flowing. Getting enough sleep, and certainly any kind of sensual and or sexual activity increases the capacity for happiness as well. When you've got that glow going on, you have access to happiness in your marriage for sure. So this is definitely not intended to be a comprehensive or complete list. It's more of an invitation to get you to think about your own happiness and how what way do you like to go to the gym for your own happiness? If you want to be strong, obviously you're going to lift weights, starting with the lighter ones and getting heavier and heavier. And if you want to increase your happiness, well, any of the things that I just described in the realms of the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, they also will grow your capacity to feel happiness regardless of what your partner is doing. Now, before I end this episode, I'm super excited because right around the corner is Valentine's Day. And I think of Valentine's Day as my busy season, the same way some retailers anticipate, let's say, Christmas as their busy season, or I don't know, the summer when school's out might be a busy season for some people. Divorce attorneys, as it turns out, their busy season is in January when the greatest number of couples file for divorce for the first time. But for me, as a relationship and intimacy coach, as someone who serves people in feeling more love and being more loving and being more generous and present without compromise, well, Valentine's Day is my busy season because this is when I'm invited to do workshops and guest teach in other people's programs and have a lot of requests for media interviews. So it's my busy season. And as part of my busy season, I have created a Valentine's course. It is a course with 3 parts having to do with how to prepare for Valentine's Day, to have the most fantastic time, how to actually enjoy your Valentine's Day celebration with your beloved, and as often happens when we are disappointed or frustrated, how to use whatever happened to create more connection and intimacy and more successful romance in the future. It's a wonderful little course. It won't take long, but it's going to give you some really incredible tips and tools to make the most of celebrating your relationship and bringing just the right flavors of romance for you and your honey to enjoy yourselves with one another. So the course is free. I want everyone to have it if they're interested. So please sign up and enjoy it. The link is in the show notes, and also it's alexandrastockwell.com/Valentines, and share it with your friends. I mean, anybody who is in a relationship, whether they're dating, engaged, newly married, or they've been married for 50 years, or 20, or 15, or 35, you get the idea. Share this Valentine's course with them. It's free, and anyone who either has a beautiful marriage or wants more love in their life with their partner is going to get a lot of benefit from this little course. So again, sign up at alexandrastockwell.com Valentines and be sure to share it with 3 or 4 or 5 friends or more. Be a Cupid yourself and share about this course, and anyone who signs up will get all the information via email and have a really fun time celebrating Valentine's. So wishing you a happy Valentine's in advance of the date, and looking forward to you being happier in your relationship and certainly enjoying Valentine's Day more than ever before.